Paul Smith College is located in the heart of the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York, not far from the two-time Olympic village of Lake Placid. It is situated on a 14,000-acre campus and has multiple educational programs such as environmental science and forestry. It has created a Troops to Timber project whose goal is to educate transitioning soldiers on the opportunities at Paul Smith College and programs available to veterans. Its coordinator, Jim Hayner, provides an overview.
Troops to Timber is an initiative that's put on by Workforce Development Institute. We take transitioning veterans from any branch of the service and we bring them into Paul Smith's and we show them what we have to offer at the college and also with the School of Logging. The School of Logging gives you a month of training on all logging practices from hand felling to feller buncher operation. And we love to have veterans show up for these events because there's no better workforce than the veteran workforce. To have veterans come and give their time and dedication, that's what this is all about, the Troops to Timber initiative.
Paul Smith College was originally a hotel in the 1860s with a tourism theme, and needless to say, the forestry procedure and practice then was different than today, including a variety of tree felling techniques. And now we head into the forests of the Adirondack Park to join up with Jim Hayner.
Welcome everyone, my name's Jim Hayner. I'm a student veteran here at Paul Smith College. I'm a senior in the forestry program, and I'm also the veteran coordinator for the Troops to Timber program, which is an initiative through the Workforce Development Institute. And what we do is we take transitioning veterans and we put them in the woods with a chainsaw and the equipment, and we get them out cutting trees. And in this video we're going to show you how to safely cut a tree compared to conventional methods, which are relatively dangerous. Brett McLeod is the forestry department chair, and he's going to take Dana Tripp out into the woods, and they're going to show you how to cut a tree with both crosscut saw and an axe, and then also the chainsaw method. And without further ado, here is Professor McLeod.
Hi folks, so today we're at Paul Smith College. It's a beautiful fall day. We got our first snow here just a couple of days ago, and we're going to head off into the woods and celebrate a tool that has a lot of purpose and a lot of value in the modern working landscape. So we're going to talk about the axe today. We're also going to be using the chainsaw, and we're really lucky that we have the log ox with us today. This is a multi-purpose forestry tool that we're going to bring out. We're going to be using it as a timber jack to lift logs. We're also going to be using it as a cant hook to roll logs around, and just generally making work a lot easier out in the forest. Hi folks, my name's Brett McLeod. I'm a forestry professor here at Paul Smith College in northern New York, and I've got Dana Tripp with me today, one of our forestry students who's an expert in tree felling. So our plan for you today is to take you through the process to safely get a tree on the ground. We're going to use an open-faced notch method. We're going to talk about each of the steps, and we're just going to take this real slow because ultimately at the end of the day, we want you to work safely and efficiently. We have a few tools with us that we're going to use. In addition to the obvious chainsaw, we're also going to be using axes. We also have our log ox forestry tool back here that we'll be using as well today. So Dana, when you approach a tree, the first step is really to inventory the hazards, right? So could you say something about the hazards around here?
Sure. So today the first aspect I always look for is electrical hazards, and then taking into consideration weather patterns. So any wind, we're looking towards our drop zone here. It's a pretty narrow drop zone in between two little structures that we can't move. So
Great, great. So our hazards are really the most important thing to nail down, because that will dictate a lot of the rest of the felling plan as well. So you mentioned the weather in terms of wind. the space that we have to put the tree down. So this is going to be precision tree felling that goes on today. We're going to go right down this narrow gap that we have here. It's about 25 feet wide, and we'll drop that tree on a dime. So, so the hazards is the first step. We also want to determine both the lean of the tree, whether it's forward or backwards, right or left, and also the point of impact. Where's this tree ultimately going to land? Where's the top of the tree in relation to surrounding obstacles? So let's go ahead, and I've got a small cruising axe here, which is actually a great tool for determining the height of a tree. So we're going to use our friend, the isosceles right triangle. And we've got basically two legs, my arm being one leg of the triangle and the handle being the other, and then our eye forming the hypotenuse. And if we back up through our felling zone and watch the top of that axe head, the doe's foot of our axe will be even with the top of the tree at the point of impact for the tip. So let's give it a go here and see if we can predict where that tree is going to go. And step on back until the top of the doe's foot is even with the top of the tree, and you can go ahead and mark the point of impact at that point. All right, folks, so now we have our target. We're going to head on back to the tree here. Actually, did you want to do side lean? Let's do side lean. Hold the axe as a palm.
You want stakes or no?
I don't think you need to do stakes, but just note if, does the tree have side lean or not?
Like a foot, if anything.
Okay. So now we're using the axe as a plumb bob and noting the side lean of the tree. This tree has just under a foot of side lean, as can be seen on the side of the axe. If the center of the tree was in line with the axe handle, it would have no lean. So we're looking to each side of the axe handle. All right, so now that we have the top of the tree marked out, it's time to find our escape route here. So where's the ideal spot for our escape route?
Ideally, we like to go 45 degrees in either direction of the target, one way or the other.
Okay, so off our back cut here at 45 degrees, and then we can just simply pace it out. I've got a nice 5-foot pace, so 5, 10, 15 feet. This will be our safety zone for that escape route. The escape route, you want to make sure that it's free of hazards, and that this is an area where you can watch that tree fall without fear that, that you'll be in the way, or that there'll be any other obstacles, what we call widow makers, dead limbs, that come out of neighboring trees as well. All right, so now we're ready for the undercut on this tree. We've gone through, we've identified our hazards, our lean, and our escape route. Now, before we ever fire up the chainsaw, we want to make sure that we have proper personal protective equipment, or PPE. Dana here is wearing chainsaw pants, steel toe boots. He has a felling belt on that has a first aid kit. It also has his wedges for felling the tree, and chainsaw tool, measuring tape. All of that is on him so that he can work efficiently while the tree is being cut. Because oftentimes you're doing this not quickly, but in a way that minimizes the amount of risk. So you're not going back to your truck to get another wedge or anything like that, leaving the tree in a precarious position. He's got all that right with him in the woods here. always make sure you have your PPE, including a helmet with both eye protection and ear protection. So these are not optional things. And although they look like regular pants, they're actually chainsaw pants filled with a polyester material that should he nick his leg, the polyester in there would jam up the clutch on the saw and bring that chain to a stop. So chainsaw injuries can be horrible, and this is a great way to make sure that working in the woods remains safe for you. So now we're going to move to the notch or the undercut on this. And in the old days when we were using crosscut saws and axes, an axe falls naturally at 45 degrees as you swing it. The problem with that is that at 45 degrees, as that tree comes to the ground, that notch closes when the tree is only halfway to the ground. Now, normally gravity does the rest of the work, but the problem is sometimes you may have other factors, other trees that it could bounce off of, or have or other hazards that it could run into. And so it's a much better idea if we can go for a notch that maybe is closer to 70 to 90 degrees, controlling that tree all the way to the ground. So we're gonna fire up the saw here. Now the chainsaw, interestingly enough, actually has sights on it, just like a gun. So what he's going to do is, as he begins to fell this tree, he's going to be using the sights on those chainsaws, which are those little black lines on the side of the saw there, to aim down his felling route, okay? And then once he makes his first cut, his down cut, he'll then be able to go ahead and clear that notch with an undercut and examine the notch both for orientation, if he has to move it right or left to get it lined up with his felling lane, and also for depth. Now you want the width of that notch to be about 80% of the diameter of the tree at the area where you're felling. So this is about a 10-inch tree, so about 8 inches wide for that notch. And once he gets that in place, we'll size it up, see how he did before we move to the bore cut. All right, so we've sized this thing up. We've got our hazards identified, our lean identified. We've marked our escape route, and we have our undercut ready to go here. Now, when we fire up our saw, I see a lot of folks who pull on it like a boat motor, and they do what's called a drop start. Quite a few injuries happen when the saw actually fires or partially fires and comes down into people's legs. So what we're going to use today is a braced start. It's sometimes called the crotch start or the knee start, where he's going to have that saw braced safely. He's going to use the decompression valve on the side of the saw. That'll reduce the pulling force required to start it, and then he can go ahead and safely start the saw. If he turns it on first. Alright, so Dana has completed the notch here, and you'll notice that the piece that came out is just about 90 degrees. Okay, so he's done a good notch here, just maybe a little bit under 90 degrees. You have a little bit of wiggle room. They say between 70 and 90 is ideal. So good notch. It's about 80% of the width of the diameter of the tree. When he cut in here, we wanted to pay attention to any defects we could see in the wood that might affect us. So I noticed the wood is a little punky here, a little soft on the inside. So that's something to be aware of. We also do have a frost crack on the back of the tree here. So these are other hazards to be aware of as we're cutting this tree. So sometimes we leave a slightly thicker hinge in this case because we don't know how far that rot goes in, but we're using a very controlled method here that accounts for any of these possible issues that you might run into. So with the chainsaw, we have 4 reaction forces. The chain is pushing on the top, pulling on the bottom. This bottom corner here is what we call our attack corner, which allows us to actually use the tip safely and bore into the tree. But the corner we want to avoid is our top one here, which is known as the kickback corner. So we'll use our bottom corner for establishing the bore cut here as our next step. So we've gone through hazards, lean, escape route. We've got our undercut here, followed by the bore, and then we'll do our back cut. All right, he's now setting the wedge on the back side of that tree. That puts tension so that the tree doesn't lean back as he's cutting it. So we have our wedge set where our bore cut is. That wedge helps to hold the tree up so that it doesn't lean back and go the opposite direction. It also gives us a place from which we can use our felling axe to persuade that tree to go over when it's time to cut the back strap on it. So I think Dana's ready. If the tree does not go immediately, which it has a little bit of lean, it probably will. If it doesn't, we can always use our felling axe and tap that wedge in and put it right over. The last thing he's going to do before he cuts that back strap or that trigger is going to be to look down the felling lane to make sure it's clear of people, obstacles, anything that he might not want to hit. He walks back to his felling range, timber! And there it is. Right down the center of his felling lane, right where he wanted it. We'll check out how he did for his mark there, but nice job, Dana, on the felling of this balsam fir. Once the tree is safely on the ground, we can begin limbing it. He'll work his way up one side here. He's moving up the side of the tree, bumping the knots as he goes, making sure that the stem is clear of all branches. Once the tree is safely on the ground, you can mark it out for bucking. This particular one we're going to use for a log, so we'll go ahead and put a tape measure on it and go for 16 feet 4 inches. Good. All right, now occasionally the bottom of the log will still have branches that aren't cut yet. And what we can do is we can use our log ox forestry tool to actually lift it up. Okay, so this is the timber jack attachment on there. We go right back, and now the log is no longer on the ground. Dana can go back underneath with the chainsaw, clean it up. We could also, if we want to clean up this end a little bit, if we wanted to buck a little bit off the end, we can do that without having it in the ground. All right. Great, so the timberjack made quick work of that. We were able to keep our saw out of the dirt. And now we've got a little bit of firewood for our campfire. And then these logs we'll be pulling out with our horses here in just a couple of minutes. All right, so we're using the log ox here to help move a little bit of firewood. It's great because it saves you from having to bend over. Now, normally people might have a short 8-inch pulp hook or be using their hands. This is right about the same level as just sort of walking and dropping your shoulder. You don't have to bend over at all. So pretty handy device. Keeps your hands clean too. This is balsam fir that we cut today, and it's full of pitch. And none of it's on our hands. All right, so we're going to go ahead and set a choker chain on that log. We use a slip hook, and we're going to put the closed end of the slip hook forward so it doesn't come out as we pull that log. We have a team here of horses, halflinger horses, a mare and a gelding, Dana and Dodge. I can roll this log for you if you'd like.
Wonderful.
All right. So you can put the chain right off the side like that. Right through. All right, we've got that log choked. We're going to get our double tree in place here for these horses. The double tree will connect the two horses to the log.
Yep, put the set up, bring it right back in here. One behind him, one behind me. Okay. Inside, just don't step inside what you're doing right now. See your foot, your left foot? Yep, keep it out.
All right, we've got the tug chains that we're going to hook to the horses on each side. We do the inside first. All right, so now we're setting the choker to the double tree. So here we are at Paul Smith College, foremost forestry school in America, and we're going old school today. So we have the horses out, the Haflinger draft horses that are helping us out for skidding the wood. And we're also going to be using a combination of a crosscut saw and an axe today. And we're going to take down this tree in a style that would have been typical of about 1880. So the crosscut saws that arrived were becoming more and more popular in the eastern United States. They made better use of the wood because you were able to cut closer to the ground, and made better use of a crew's time. We were able to split the duty between two sawyers instead of having a single axeman on a tree. So we're going to start out here. We'll go through the 5 steps of the felling plan. The first thing we want to do is identify our hazards. Now, we are actually out at the Paul Smith's Vic here. This is a multi-use forest, so we have recreation going on out here. We've notified folks that would be out here felling trees today, but we do want to be mindful of people coming down the trail. We've also had wind picking up a little bit, so we want to pay attention to any change in direction of the wind or any other problems we might run into that might be brought on by the weather we've had. Frozen wood cuts differently than thawed wood, for example. So we want to be thinking about all of that as we go through our different steps today. So we've got our hazards identified. We also have a few folks joining us today watching. Those are a hazard as well. We want to make sure that we look down our felling lane, make sure it's clear before this tree heads to the ground. The lean of the tree. So this particular tree, I'm going to ask my assistant Dana to use an axe, and he's going to take this axe and use it as a plumb bob to see if this tree has a lean down our felling lane. And we're going to be felling it diagonally across the skid trail here. All right, we're sizing up the tree, creating a right angle there so we can work off of that right angle, backing up until the top of the axe handles, even with the top of the tree, to establish the height. And also using the axe handle, flip the opposite direction as a plumb bob to determine right or left lean of the tree. Now that we've determined where this tree is going, we can begin our undercut. We're going to use a traditional felling saw. So these crosscut felling saws were much more flexible. It made it easier for the sawyer to stand up or be in more compromising positions, maybe on uneven ground, and still run the saw efficiently. The way this is going to work is I'll work with my partner Dana here. He'll take the other end of the saw, and we're going to begin by doing an undercut. This undercut is going to be lined up with where we want this tree to fall. So we're going to get right down here, and we'll pull this saw back and forth, keeping the saw level and lined up as we go. Good. All right. So we're about 1/3 of the way through this tree now. And what we can do is we can pull the saw out and we'll switch to the axe. All right, now that we've made the undercut about 1/3 of the way through the tree with the crosscut saw, we're going to switch to the axe. We're going to cut at a 45 degree angle and bisect our undercut. We're going to move from our near wood to our far wood, near wood, then far wood. All right, didn't take too long. We got our notch out, and now we're ready to move to the backside for the back cut. Now for this, each faller needs one escape route about 15 feet from the tree. Four inches. You need some? Smooth it out. Yep. Three. Timber! There it is. All right, now we're going to go ahead and limb this up with an axe, staying on the offhand side. Once the log's on the ground, we then move to bucking. This is a particularly dangerous part of using an axe, and Dana actually is a professional axeman, so this is a more advanced skill that I don't recommend folks try at home. He goes in a circular pattern, chopping his bottom wood, then his top wood on the other side at a 45-degree angle. He'll get about halfway through the log and then he'll switch to the back side. At this point, he's ready to turn. It requires great balance and also great axe precision, being able to put that axe in the same spot over and over again. He'll break through his top wood first, so the tops start to give, and then the bottom, and the log will be severed. One more hit, and there it is. Okay, so now we've got this piece, we can move it back to camp, get it out of the way, and we'll move down the log with the axe and take another cut. So he's going to make one more cut.
Good.
You could also use the axe from the ground for bucking. He goes for a nice wide face. Again, he's going in that circle pattern, cutting his near wood, then the far wood. Once he gets most of the way through on this side, he can go to the other side of the tree to finish it. All right, so now he'll move to the other side. He's got a little better angle for severing this log now. I'm gonna jump in with the log ox, put a little tension on there for him. Hold on. Okay, go ahead. There we are. Nicely done. We can clean up our limbs with the axe, get the horses in here, and we'll call it a day.
Thank you everyone for joining us today for our tree felling demonstration. We hope you found some valuable information and you learned something. Big thank you to WDI, the Workforce Development Institute, for making this possible, and Paul Smith College for being our host. If you're interested in more information, you can visit the Troops to Timber Facebook page, which is recently posted, and also you can visit www.paulsmiths.edu for more information.